Ko tongariro te maunga, ko taupo te moana, ko tūwhareto te iwi, no te waka o te aroa hau, no Ngāti piki ao tūhaurangi Ngāti Wāhi o Hoki. Kia ora, my name's Moana. I grew up in Invercargill, one of 6 kids, the oldest, and my dad moved down to Invercargill in the 50s to find work on the wharf and in the freezing works, and he took with him his guitar, ukulele and sax, and he could play all of those. I don't think the sax got much of a workout, but the guitar and ukulele, up until probably about a year before he died, he would pull them out, I don't know, 10 times a day. And he started up his own band in Invercargill. It was called the Māori Rhythm Boys, and they were pretty cool. And he asked his aunties from Whakarewarewa if they could send down 40 piu-piu so that he and his band and all his cousins down there could stage a show at the Invercargill Civic Theatre. So he was very proud of that. So yeah, I always grew up with a lot of music in our house in Invercargill. And then when we moved up to Rotorua in the 70s, Dad and his brothers were well known for being singers at our marae, where the custom at Waitatoko was that when visitors went in for a meal, there'd be non-stop singing. So they would get the guitars out, he and his 4 brothers, and they'd do all these kind of doo-woppy platter songs. Only in a cab driver once more around the block. So it's quite funny because when we did our Arts on Tour thing, that's how I started off my set. I said, we're going to start off with songs that Dad used to sing. And then he got involved in, well, they didn't call it kapahaka in those days. I think it was Māori Culture Club or something. So he always did that. So yeah, grew up around that. Yeah, we used to all sing, but not publicly. When we came up to the marae and Dad spoke, then when we got a little bit older, like we're in our teens, then it was expected that we would sing after our father, and that was a horrific experience for all of his shy kids. So it's only been in the last 10 years we've kind of like, manned up and started sort of putting a set together. So now we're not too bad because our father and our uncles have passed on, so we have to kind of carry on a bit of a legacy. Yeah, a bit challenging. Not as neat as they were. I wanted to play the guitar, straight to the guitar, and Dad used to insist that I learned how to play the ukulele, and I was pretty useless, really. But I think at school, at St. Joseph's Māori Girls College was where I first picked up the guitar. Everyone seemed to play the guitar there, so I'd pinch one, I don't know where I'd get it from, and then go and hide away in a little quiet piano room and try and figure out, what to do with 3 chords that someone taught me. It's a bit embarrassing. Was Funny Face. Who the heck sang that? Funny face, I love you. Oh my God, why was I singing that? At the Rotorua Sound Shell, they used to have these talent quests, and gee, I can see his name used to run it. Trevor Maxwell used to run it all the time, and somehow I went in there, and I should have let him play, but I got this guy from school to play. He couldn't play it, so that was a bit of a disaster. And then at St. Joseph's, I think, in Māori Girls College, I think I did Fernando by ABBA in a talent quest. So I was useless again. Bloody hell, it's hopeless. It was at university when my friend Aroaro Hond and I sort of formed this little duo, and we went around all the clubs. There was quite a vibrant club scene in those days in South Auckland, and in there's a place called Cleopatra's out in Panmure. I don't even know how we got there. I think one of her nanas had a car. We used to go out there and we'd enter in all these talent quests. There was a place called Peppermill that was under Trillo's. I don't even know if Trillo's is still going. Somewhere downtown Auckland. So we'd enter all these talent quests, and we actually did quite well. We won a couple and we'd get to the finals. We were doing Donna Summer. we love Donna. Yeah, and then singing in clubs. Like, they used to have these things called floor shows where there'd be a resident band and then men who would come on and do a half-hour floor show. I don't even know if we were paid, come to think, but I guess we must have been. But it was actually really good training. So other people were doing that, like Annie Crummer was doing that. Artie Jar were kind of starting up at the same time. And sometimes there'd be a resident band. So I got to know a lot of the musicians, the working musicians that mainly came from South Auckland. And it was a highly competitive scene, and it was good. There was a guy called Tui Timoti who was pretty legendary, very ruthless, fantastic musician. He could play nearly everything. He could read music, which wasn't that common among Māori musicians. And he took a liking to me in Aroaro. And he'd sort of snap at everyone else. I don't know why he liked us. And he kind of coached us. And so I guess at that time it was all about pleasing the crowd, so singing what they liked. And it was just professionalism, to have fun. And, you know, if you can survive the crowds in South Auckland, you're all right. You do okay. I'd end up playing, you know, in clubs and pubs. Some of them were a bit dodgy, you know. They were quite, they used to bolt the tables to the floor because so saved the punters from throwing them at people. Played in a few gang pads back in the day, and then got a residency in a band in Queen Street for a couple of years. So that was 5 nights a week, singing whatever was on the top 10. Yeah, and then I'd watch all these other bands come down the steps trying to talk to Johnny Tabler, the Albanian dude who ran the place. He didn't say much except bok bok, but he was always very pleasant to me. And I watched his bands come down, and I could see them going, "Get them on the stage, we'll be better." But he held on. You know, we left when we felt like it. That was great. I enjoyed it. It's pretty intense. 10:30 till 2:30 in the morning. I learned how to parallel park, because I had to park my car. In those days you could park on Queen Street, and opposite was the big bus stop. So, you know, I nailed the car parking. Had a couple of car accidents, but that's another story. And yeah, enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. But I could only sing songs that I liked, like up until about 15 minutes at the start and 15 minutes at the end. Everything else was Madonna and whoever was, you know, Rick James and whoever else was in the top 10. I was at Waikato University for 1 year, and that was really the place for te reo Māori. So there were people there like Timoti Karetu and Wharehuia Milroy, John Moorfield, Hirini Melbourne. So, I mean, this was just a hotbed of kind of reo, and that was the main focus. But when I moved up to Auckland University, that would probably be 1980, I think, then I was starting to do law, and then in 81 it all sort of kicked in with the Springbok tour, and because my lecturers Jane and David Williams and all that, they were sort of very conscientised, and that kind of, you know, connected with me. It was just kind of being around that scene and being involved as a young person, and then when there's lots of things happening in the 80s, the language was starting to, there was Kohanga Reo, there was, we'd come out of the 70s with the Land March and Bastion Point and Raglan, stuff that I'd watched on television while I was at school but really didn't understand what was going on. I met Eva Rickard when I was at Waikato University, so there were different lecturers there that were kind of talking about activism and that. But Auckland was very much the kind of university, I think, for, you know, knuckling down. No, the first time I realised that music could be really powerful in terms of activism was going to watch Bob Marley. So me and my mate from Hamilton hitchhiked up there to Western Springs, and I mean, that was a bit of a revolution, revolution and a revelation. I actually hadn't really heard of Bob Marley. When I went to Waikato University, the guy next door to me, he used to send me these albums. This is all vinyl. Peter Tosh and Bob Marley. So I started listening to it. So when Bob Marley came, I had no idea what it looked like. We just went up there and I thought, whoa, my God, that was fantastic. So the little seeds were there. And then, of course, he inspired 100 reggae bands, most of them down in Wellington, and Herb's up here in Auckland. And then Delvanius came out with his songs around about the same time. But I was kind of leading a bit of a parallel life. So on one side, learning te reo, involved in activist movements, at home at my marae, with a very strong Māori family. And then over here, singing in clubs and, trying to be as black as as I could, trying to be like Shaka Khan. So it's very much a parallel world in the early to mid 80s. And then and Delvanius came along and he kind of offered me, he wanted me to sing a song in Māori, so that was kind of the second one I put out. Me and my mate from school actually put out a song in Māori in 1982. That would have got played 3 times on the radio, Kaore He Wahine, an old school song. But yeah, Delvanius kind of kicked me in. Delvanius was full of fabulous sayings like, be nice to people on the way up, you meet the same ones on the way down. Don't believe the hype, don't believe the PR, remember who wrote it. You are not the star, the reo is the star. And he was very industry savvy. He knew the media, he nurtured relationships with the record company and all that. He knew how in those days that certain record shops were part of the counting system for getting things up the charts. So he got people to go en masse in there and buy stuff. And so I learnt that it was more than that. Music industry is more than just singing lovely and putting out a song. There was a lot of conniving and manipulating and plotting and planning that goes in the background. And he, being a plotter, got on very well with my husband at the time, Willie Jackson, who was equally a good plotter and equally ambitious for me. So they worked out a plan, and they were great. They were great together. They used to have little wee arguments and tiffs, but they were a good team. Delvanius came up to me, he just said, we need more Māori women in the New Zealand music industry. There aren't any. So you're it. So I'm going to take you to some modelling place and they're going to ta-ta you up and we'll take photographs. We've got this song and you're going to be out on my label, Maui, and here you go, meet Tim Murdoch, who wasn't the nicest person to us. And, and we're going to do all this thing. So Willie would use his networks in the Māori world, and Delvanius would use his networks in the Pākehā world, and they just harass everybody until people understood that the song was out there, and it got really good traction. In the Māori world, like I still have lots of people that come and go, "Are you going to sing Kua Māko?" And I go, "No." And my son, who's 26, told me that it was a party hit at university when he was there, and they'd just all sit around drinking, which is kind of ironic given the kaupapa of the song was moderation. It was funded by ALAC at the time. So yeah, it kind of, I got an insight into the industry and how it worked, going into a big major record company, Warner or WA, whatever it was called, seeing all the people working in there, making decisions about me and airbrushing the damn cover on the thing so that I looked like a drag queen version of Cher, and then trying to shop Māori music out, and then that was really challenging for all of them. Yeah. So Te Māori was a really pivotal landmark thing in the Māori world. It went off overseas. and that was validation from overseas that Māori were, you know, fabulous, as we all know. So when it came back, there was a big concert at the town hall, and Dalvanius got me to perform a song called Ngoi Ngoi that he wrote, and Aotearoa was there, and I just loved them. They performed Mihi Ngā Tīpuna or something fantastic, and I thought, oh, I like them, they look really staunch and fabulous. And I met Ngāhiwi. I said, oh, I like your music, that's awesome. He goes, do you want to be in our band? I said, okay, where are you? He goes, Wellington. I said, oh, okay then. So I talked to Willie. Willie thought that was a great idea. So I joined Aotearoa for 2 years, which was a long way for rehearsals. And it was a lot of, I'd just come out of singing in the clubs, you know. It was a long way to, it was logistically a bloody nightmare, to tell you the truth. But we got out to all these different places, and we sung bilingual songs that Ngāhi had written, that was real stand-up for, you know, for Māori kind of kaupapa, and it wasn't Rastafarian, which a lot of other bands had that kind of thing going on. This was just straight Māori. So I enjoyed it, I loved it, and a great bunch of musicians that went through there. Well, you see, I'd come from a club background, which was all very peachy, happy, yeah, everyone, yeah. And then you had to kind of staunch up a little bit when you're in Aotearoa. But I had my mate Mere Boynton, she was the other female. So we used to have fun. But you know, it was a very political band. And I you know, all the songs resonated with me. And I enjoyed the musicians around me. They were really excellent musicians. So I had sung with bands in Auckland. But it was really great to sing with a band that was writing its own music, so not doing covers. So, you know, that was fun. I was doing their covers, but that worked for me, yeah. And it was reggae. Everyone loves reggae. Yeah, and we'd do a lot of fundraisers, like everything that was going. Kanaki Freedom, Bastion Point, you know, different concerts that were going. On any subject you could think of, because the band just locked into so many kaupapa. So that was quite difficult. We'd drive for hours to do a kaupapa gig. But that was all right. That's good practice, good learning ground for me. Not all about the fee. So in '89, we started up the Moa Hunters. That was Willie's idea. We start up our own band where we're in charge, because there's always a drama when you're in someone else's band. Whoever was in charge was the one who had the van or the PA, you know, and it was just a hoo-ha. So they said, let's start our own band. Oh, okay then. So we'll grab some of these cool musos from South Auckland that we've known, and we'll start our own band. And we'll have a little bit of a kaupapa to it, but we'll have the fun factor that we had in the clubs. So we started our band, and I know Mina Ripia was quite keen. He said, let's get some dancers. That Mina's quite good. She's in Billy TK and Wharemana, and I'd done a little bit of work with them. So we invited her to dance, and there's been a cast of thousands along the way. She was the main one. Then later Ted Mwana Rapley would join once we kicked into the Moa Hunters a bit more. So that would have been in '89. We started up north in some field at some festival, like Waimati or somewhere. I remember it was in a field. Anyway, it went down really well with the people. They quite liked that. It's kind of a big band, these couple of women and me singing, and we'd do Kua Mākona and a couple of songs that Dalvanius had written for me, Pupurutia, and I did one of Mahinarangi's songs, Papa Tuanuku, that she had me record, but otherwise it's still kind of covers. And then I went overseas to the States with Sid Jackson, Willie's uncle, and his wife Deji Nehua, who were guests of the Nation of Islam, and so we stayed with families in New York and in Chicago, and then we went down to Detroit. There was something happening where Minister Louis Farrakhan, the head of the Nation of Islam, was invited to an ecumenical kind of gathering where the Baptists and the whatever other religions they've got there, and the Muslims were coming together to sort of celebrate being Afro-American and look at things holistically as a people. So we also, in our flight down, we were with Minister Farrakhan. Reverend Al Sharpton came down with us too. So he was sort of larger than life, looked like a James Brown, and he had all these bodyguards. And I remember me and Deirdre going, far out, this is full on. So we fly down to Detroit, go to this amazing Baptist church, and everyone's dressed up to the nines, and there's like a band and a choir and this other minister who's very much like James Brown talking, and all this interaction between the people and the minister. Every time he said something, yeah, brother minister, yeah, brother, and it was like so entertaining. And we're the only 3 non-Afro-American foreigners there. We're only 3 foreigners there, and we're sitting there going, God, this is fantastic. Getting really excited, and people would walk up sort of like random. They'd say, oh, praise the Lord, and then they'd sing, Jesus, and sound really incredible. And I'd say to my host, oh God, what a singer. Are they like famous? And they go, oh no, it's just a sister from around the block. So after this happened about 3 times, I thought, I'd been in the clubs trying to sound as black as, like Shaka Khan, and then I heard these, sisters from around the block, singing so amazing. I thought, shit, I think I better just lose that whole music thing that I've been, what have I been thinking? Anyway, the minister, he had said to the congregation, did you know there are black folk in the bottom of the South Pacific? And so I'm turning to Sid and Deirdre, and I'm going, there's black folk in the bottom of the South Pacific, did you ever know? And anyway, not thinking they're talking about us, and he goes, they are called Maori Indians. And we're thinking, oh hell, he is talking about us, okay. And then he said, we got some Maori Indian brothers and sisters here today, please stand up for the Maori activist, Sid Jackson. Uncle Sid stands up. He's like, kia ora, kia ora. And then his wife, Sister Deirdre. And he goes, and Sister Mona Jackson. So I stood up, and then we sat down and was going, oh my God, how fabulous. And then he goes, Sister Mona Jackson is a popular Maori singer. Because my hosts had told them. And we're going to get the sister up to sing. And I just was so mortified. And I said to Uncle Sid and Deirdre, oh my God, we have to get up and sing. And Uncle Sid said, what do you mean we, basically? You go up there, you'll be right. You roll. Okay, come on. No, I'm not going. So I thought I'm going to have a heart attack, because the congregation is like, go to Sister, Maori Indian sister. It was all like, and as I was walking, I sort of, I had my little epiphany about, years of trying to be black in South Auckland and wherever, that maybe it's not too bad to be Māori in this situation. So I thought, I'm going to sing a Māori song that we all know back home, written by Hirini Melbourne. So I figured that out as I walked to the front. It gives me palpitations thinking about it now. And I sang and I was so nervous. I was doing the whole witty and everything, and the response was really amazing afterwards. And when we went back to my friend's house, our host's house, he said, "Sister, they're talking about you on the radio." So we went and listened, thinking this is like one surreal day, and this man had rung up the radio host, and he said, did you know there are black folk in the bottom of the South Pacific? They'd be called Maori Indians. And we're like, oh my God, here we go again. He said, and there was a sister there singing in her language today, and she made the hairs stand on the back of my neck. So I thought, wow, isn't that amazing? That kind of resonated with these people that I had always looked up to, something like simple that I had done in our language that we hadn't heard of on our radio, kind of like touched them in some way. And then this Reverend Al Sharpton, who I think is the greatest speaker I've ever heard in my life. He was electrifying, and Minister Farrakhan is electrifying too, but Sharpton was just out of this planet. He had said, "You've got to stand for something. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything." And that stuck with me, and I came back and when I go out and speak to students, I tell them that story about knowing what you stand for, what your values are, and otherwise you get sucked into anything. And so that experience was quite a meaningful one to me. And when we'd come back and we'd kicked into doing Black Pearl, that was on the cards to being released. We started to think, I was with Murray Kamek then, Willie had hooked us up there, and he was fantastic, Murray, and started to think about, writing our own music that was in line with the kaupapa, So yeah, that was being mixed up with the Nation of Islam, seeing their respect for things Māori, right high at the top level, and I think that was definitely pivotal in my thinking. Well, when I first started doing tahi, we just sampled it. Me and Angus sampled it, so we got into a bit of trouble with Richard Nunn's. Not real trouble. He just wrote to us and said, so you sampled my sounds, and I said, oh, actually I thought it was Hirini Melbourne, because I went down to see Hirini and see if that was all right. He goes, yeah, no, that was me. I did all that. He said, it was fantastic. But anyway, we ended up working, Richard became a part of the band for many years. And we used to try and make him fit in a bit, because he was like about 6'3", the whitest parka you've seen. So we dress him up in black. We go, oh yeah, no, you're just what you are, Rich, that's all cool. And he mentored Horomona, who became a part of our band. I met Richard and when I went on a Tonga Puro wānanga. That's actually where I met Toby as well, my partner. So we started to incorporate it, the real thing, in the next series of recordings when we did Rua and all that. Yeah, but it was exciting. I'd read about it. I read a little bit about it. Hirini was one of my lecturers at varsity, but we didn't really talk about it, didn't really know a lot about it. And so at this Tonga Puro wānanga in Ōtaki, I went down by myself to it. That's when I sort of discovered, these old things, and they'd play them. And it just seemed that they were kind of in the sort of the folk music world. They hadn't come across into contemporary. Ngahi, we had a little bit of experimentation in Aotearoa, but yeah, we started to try and bring it in, not just in recordings but on stage. But it was actually quite hard to find people who could play them. Yeah, so like flutes, yeah, hardly anyone could play them in tune, on cue, and you needed that in a band. So that's why Richard was important. Hirini, he just couldn't get away from his university stuff. And then over the years, there's been more and more people that have been able to do that. We can do some, like Pūrerehua and the aerophonic instruments, but not the flutes. We heard about these Neville brothers, didn't really know their music. We were on a record company, I can't remember which one. Anyway, they said, or we said, maybe it was Willie's idea. He said, let's hook up with the Neville brothers. Somehow we got support. He said, let's welcome them out to South Auckland. He says, I hear they're quite political, and So anyway, he liaised with the record company, so they came out to Māngere. And I mean, I only knew Aaron Neville, what he looked like in that. So they all bowled up in this big bus into like one of the roughest streets in the middle of Māngere. And we had all this cranky band equipment set up in a little stage inside the dining room at the marae there, and we had a pōhere for them, and I remember us singing Whakaria mai, and Aaron turning around and going, oh, that's how great they are. I said, yeah, it is, eh? So because I thought I thought actually our singing wasn't much chop, you know, because it's quite funny sometimes in the marae. These kaumatua start and they go, oh God, yeah, you know, think, oh God. But anyway, the guys loved it, the Neville brothers loved it. And then we took them inside and they had mutton birds and all this awesome kai. And then I think Willie said, well, you know, in our culture, it's customary to play a song after you've been welcome. So they got up on this huckery equipment and they just, you know, jambalaya, crawfish, but they just played all this stuff and everyone loved them. It was like having your cousins in your house. And so we all got on really well, and then they liked our band when we performed, when we did support, and they were very down to earth. So they rung me up in the days when the phone was attached to the wall. They rang me up to say, we've got a great idea. We'd like you all to come to New Orleans because we're going to release an album, and we'll get you some gigs over here. And we sampled some stuff from that welcome, and we're going to turn it into a song. I said, oh, okay then. So we fundraised to get to Tipitina's and to New Orleans Jazz Heritage Festival, and bands like Crowded House found out about it, and I remember they did a concert in Altair Square and put the hat around, and that was really kind of them. And the Exponents sent us a koha, and MCOJ and Rhythm Slave, all these different musicians came out to support us, which was really lovely. So we get over there and they said, oh, we've released this, we've got this album, and that song Whakaaria Mai, we've recorded that, and we've got Aaron singing How Great Thou Art over the top. So I listened to it. It was really beautiful, really beautiful. And the producer says, it took me ages to get rid of your kids screaming. Tahi was interesting because we had done all these songs. When I look, I had to talk about it recently, and I hadn't played the album for ages. And when I play it, I can just hear the flaws, like songs I think, oh, what was I thinking? But then an amazing array of songs too that I think I'm really proud of. And Murray Kemmick was great in matching me with Angus McNaughton, who was fantastic to work with. But towards the end, he said, "Just write a song. We're missing a couple of songs. Just write a song that'll never get played on the radio," because we were kind of radio focused and club focused, because Black Pearl had done really, really well. So anyway, so I got Ruia Apurihama, and he did this little waiata, which became the basis of Tahi. And we started to bring in Tonga Puro to replace the rhythm track. So we went to a local school and we sampled them doing the poi and doing the haka and chanting and slaps, and then we whipped it all up. And you know, and that became the title track and the dance track and stuff like that. So that kind of was a lot of fun. And it was funny because Ruia, who I just always admired, I'd met him in the Aotearoa days. And I'd say, come in here and just stand there and do that hand game that everyone used to play, the hei tama tu tama, hei tama tu tama. And he'd look at me like I lost the plot, so go into the booth, go, oh, okay, hei tama tu tama. And then do a tau parapara like they do on the marae, like how you'd speak on the marae. So you go, ruia, ruia, you know. And I just loved how that, you know, it kind of, because I'd looked at hip-hop and different things, and I felt that we had those kind of vocalizations and art forms in our culture. We just hadn't put it into sort of contemporary dance music. So yeah, that was fun and experimental. Ruia had he told me to come down to Ratanapa, and him and his brothers put a drum kit and some amps out on the lawn, put an armchair down for me, and said, here we're going to play a whole bunch of songs. Now you pick whatever you like. That can be on your album. So I picked a couple of songs, Prophecies and Bird in a Tree. And in the 1990s, I'd gone to the Fiscal Envelope Hui down in Hirangi, which was a very powerful protest by iwi leaders against Doug Graham's brilliant idea not to put a cap on treaty settlements. So I was pretty much inspired by that, so I wrote Treaty. The band, yeah, I've had awesome musicians in my band over the years. Richie Campbell, who was my long-time drummer for many years. He was also a black belt karate instructor, so he used to bash the hell out of that bass drum, kick drum. He was really awesome. And he produced a couple of songs on there. Kadzo Kosa was one of my early guitarists, and he's still with me. He's a beautiful guitarist, and probably, you know, he needs to be, his praises need to be more widely sung, because he's one of those journeyman guitarists that I saw Barnaby wear at something recently. He's like, oh my God, you're a guitarist. I said, yeah, he can play anything. He's a great guitarist. Beautiful. And for a long time, Kadzo used to have to try and make, like when we had a shrunk down version of Moana and the Tribe, where there was just two musicians, Kadzo would basically cover the whole band with his playing. So he's very, very clever. So when we got the new musicians in, you know, the whole lot, he could just pull back a bit. Yeah, so the Moor Hunters was great musicians from South Auckland: Brent Turner, Pete Hoyter, JD, John Diamond, and Scotty Morrison, who's still with me and as a co-writer and advisor and sometimes performer. Yeah, but lots, cast of thousands. Tere Moana Rapley, who wrote parts on A'i o U, obviously, and Minaripia, who went on to form her own band. Yeah. I really enjoy doing it overseas, you know, because it's a clean slate there, so no one knows you from a bar of soap, and there's no one going, oh, can you sing Kua Mako or not? Or, oh, yeah, there's that radical, or whatever, you know, there's just no preconceptions. So that's always fun, and it's been a wonderful thing to see how people respond to our music, the musical elements of it, but also the kind of the stories that we tell in our music, to see that they're quite universal stories, really. When I sort of thought that at the start, a lot of the songs that I was writing and co-writing were to reaffirm Māori, to, you know, uplift us, make us feel good, and challenge, you know, the government and Pākehā in terms of attitude and thinking. But then I found this whole Indigenous network overseas through different festivals, and then just more and more people outside the Indigenous whānau that feel the same. We get a fabulous reaction to the language when we're overseas, because people actually like the sound of it. It's very round. Every word ends in a vowel. So it's a beautiful language. And, you know, because overseas, in Europe in particular, there's so many different languages, there's no het up. No one gets freaked out about people singing in a different language. They embrace it. It's kind of like the entire WOMAD is plonked into Europe. There are no borders when it comes to language. So that's never been an issue. And it's less of an issue here. I mean, when I first started singing or recording in Māori, there was a sense that people were being cut out of the conversation and getting a little bit defensive that we might be plotting something, but we never actually said anything in our music that we didn't say, you know, in public in English. So, yeah, the language, people loved it, and we inspired a whole bunch of, you know, Russian students to put a course together at a university in Russia after we left there. They started up a course in the Faculty of Linguistics in the University of Humanities, because we did a university gig, and they loved the language so much they staged a protest until they got it. So we went back up there and got welcomed by these Russian professors, and Ngomai Hairemai, and we took up, me and Scotty Morrison and Paula Sharples and Toby, we took up some DVDs and resources for them so that they could teach Māori. Me too. So I had to write a show for this Arts on Tour that would mean whittling our band down to 4. That's the most you can fit in the minibus. So we actually did we've done a roadie. This is the first time I've actually done a real roadie with one of my bands in New Zealand and gone to these small theatres. And it was fun because I took my own PA and we could actually hear ourselves every night for a change. And I actually learned how to do the cables, BYO roadie, after years of being spoilt rotten, and just going to smaller places and like stripping things back. Sometimes it was quite acoustic, and I played the guitar very badly, but by the time of the end of the tour I was quite good. I did debut my guitar playing at the Sydney Opera House once, which wasn't a bad place, but that's because my mates were even more useless, so I was it. But Ian Trina played ukulele and Carlos was on guitar and bass and Patty just did everything. And so we sort of started off with a garage party, work through acoustic versions of different songs, and then we'd sing Not Alone with Patty, had all the stuff on there, and then we'd get up to Treaty, which I've redone as an acoustic thing, and then we get to our tribe stuff. And it was great fun, great response, wonderful response, very heartening actually. Well, most people would say, I didn't know what to expect. So I sort of thought, I'd say, well, aren't you neat coming out, not knowing what to expect? And they'd go, I loved it. I want to go out there and fight now. I'd go, yes, yes. Yeah, so it was kind of like celebrating people power and looking at issues around water. And lots of people that came up that said, you know, a, e, or u, which we did this little acoustic medley of some of the old songs, Moko, Tahi, a, e, or u, and Black Pearl, I think. And they'd come up and they'd say, oh yeah, that was the one that made me think, you know, how to pronounce. And so that was quite nice having that feedback. Yeah, it was great. I'm glad that I did that Revolutions thing with John Toogood and Warren Maxwell and Rob Ruha, thanks to Carla Van Zonen and Tama. I was very nervous about it because I've always had my blankie. It's either been Cadzo or Patty Free and my sister. So to be by myself, I was like thinking, oh my God, they're quite flash, these guys. So I was really nervous. So I had to take 4 songs into this celebration of kind of songs that you think had a message, a revolutionary message. So I'd worked on an acoustic version of Treaty that I actually tried to bring into the tribe, and we just couldn't make it work. It didn't work. So I thought, bugger, I'm sure this will work, this bloody version. We can't quite make it work with the band, but I'll try it for this thing, and it did work. It was exactly how I envisaged it. I hadn't envisaged that I would be playing the guitar accompanying someone flash like Warren Maxwell on flute. You know, I was beside myself, and John Toogood on bass, and I was thinking, oh God, I'm going to go out of time. But John would always go, oh, there's that funky timing girl, you know. And they were really, really supportive. So yeah, so then I took that out of there, and that gave me the confidence to think, okay, I can play the guitar. I'm all right. I'm not Cadzo, but who needs Cadzo here? I'm going to do this myself and take it on tour with us. And you know, I'm really pleased. It's lovely. And the Carbo Loaders was a great experience because it was challenging, because I actually had to learn to be a backing vocalist. Well, we all did. We all had to learn to be backing vocalists because we're all like pushy out the front. So we had to learn how to sit back, and Warren was the best at that, but me and John were a bit forceful. So we had to sit back and just go, ooh, stop, you know, and then do nothing, which is quite weird on stage, do nothing. But oh yeah, I love those guys, all 3 of them, they're just fantastic. So yeah, we got a good rapport going. Like for me, the 4 songs that I took, because you know, I kind of think, oh God, how are they going to stand up next to them? Because some of the songs are quite complex, and I think, oh, you know, that's quite a simple song that I'm bringing, because I write simple songs, and they're like this is cool. I love this song. This is like, you know, and so actually having to break down, we spent a week with each other breaking down each song to its nuts and bolts and then rebuilding it. Once I got the confidence that, oh, these guys, we're all on the same side here, it's not a competition, they were very nurturing, and it was actually the same for them. I found out later on, they were all a bit nervous. Then we could have the fun of breaking a song down and building it back again, which was really cool, gave it a new life. I am doing my 6th album, a studio album. It's called Ono. So it's 6 songs that me and Patty have written, and Scotty's given us all the lyrics, and they're all based on karakia. So some of them are mellow. One's mellow, it's like a lullaby. You know, I almost go to sleep singing it. And then some of them are quite dance numbers. They might be about baptism, dedicating a child to the god of war. And one's like a love charm. So they're all got a traditional Māori world view, and they're all in Māori. And then I've got a guest artist from a country that I've performed in. So I've only recorded one so far. That's Marty Boyne from Norway, a Sami artist. And I've got Megan Henderson, who's a Scottish artist that I've worked with. She's doing one on the peace karakia. So yeah, that's the idea. But yeah, it's not as easy as I thought it would be. You know, we've gone so far away from when we did tahi, where you sort of start to think, okay, you know, so you need to get a song on the radio, so it should be under 4 minutes at least. 4 minutes is way too long. It should be in English too, really. It's just I've got songs that are 7.5 minutes, you know. But it's like, well, Patty doesn't do 3-minute numbers, and you just get into a groove because the karakia is hypnotic, you know. So, you know, you're doing a karakia to bewitch someone, a love charm, where you just got to, you know, just carries and pulses, and you know, it's fantastic. I love it. So we might get an audience of 500 who buy it, but who cares? I love it. Yeah, mōteatea is that traditional style of singing that you find in at tangihana or on marae, and it seems to a Western ear it's quite monotone, but it's very haunting and evocative, and it goes around in circles. So, I mean, I'm not an expert in it, so I only know about 3, and whenever we sing it, me and Trina and Horomona or Scotty, under duress I might add, because you really have to be doing them all the time to kind of get it in your brain. We always worry that we're going around in a circle and we're repeating ourselves, and you catch that sometimes when people do it. So it's like one of my favourite one is one I recorded for Whā. It goes like this. Ka e ke kiwaira ka katahuri whakamuri ka ti ko te aro ha te tia pui ka ke puku ki are. So it goes on and it sort of rolls. It's very beautiful and very visually beautiful when you're thinking about it, but you know, really long. And sometimes the starts of the lines, they start with the same word, and you can get this feeling like, did I just sing that one? Did I just go around? But I love that style. So in Ono, we've got quite a bit of that, and Scotty does that because he does it better than me sometimes. Yeah. So I think that with me and Willie, it was very difficult to be. We were in a period when. So he was very much the activist. He was a union man and you know, very staunch activist, and with his uncle Sid in Tauhinari and Atarita Puananga. They were very powerful, wonderful activists, and his father was as well on the Auckland District Māori Council with people like Ranginui Walker and Hone Kā. So that they influenced me a lot. So we were on a mission. We were on a distinct mission, and music was a vehicle, you know. So our mission was to be part of a movement that moves our people forward, you know. And we talk and tino rangatiratanga and all that. music just happened to be what I ended up doing it. And so my passion has been the people, you know, and music's been the vehicle. So we're pretty driven. Then here's my manager, and at the same time my husband. So that was a triple jeopardy. That was an explosion waiting to happen. And so he would say to me, as he would have said to another artist, what the hell was that singing about? That was bloody terrible, or, oh, that song stinks, you know. And then I'd go, oh, you know, and I'd be very hurt about it. So we discussed how how much being a manager and the activism and the marriage, it was just too much. It's just too many things going on, too high pressure. So that you learn that afterwards. And he didn't want to manage me after we divorced, which I thought was a bit stink. But anyway, fair enough. And then and Toby is a creative person, so he's a filmmaker, documentary maker. And he's bossy because he's a director. So I've had two bossy men in my life. And so sometimes we've learnt to have a little bit of distance from each other's projects. But he's mentored me into documentary making, which is, you know, another way of telling the story and pushing our people forward. So it's been really, really exciting. But, you know, yeah, he brings a lot of talent to the table. But thank God he's not managing me, you see? So I've got Soul. Soul is managing me. He's fantastic. Oh my God, he's fantastic. Yeah, it's very difficult, and with a family, with young children. So when I went to New Orleans, I left my son behind, Kimiora, who always reminds me, with his grandparents, because I thought that's the best thing for the kid. But with Manawa Nui, I've taken her around the world as soon as she was born. She was premature. As soon as she was born, we were over in Aussie. And then I've taken her around Europe with us. She's travelled everywhere with the band. Only one tour she never went on because it was too short. But yeah, she's been everywhere. And, you know, I mean, what a treasure for a child to travel around the world, to go to the Arctic, to go to Borneo, and, you know, places that she can't remember a lot of it now, but it doesn't matter because she's used to hearing people speak different languages and meeting people for a short time and knowing it's going to be a short time, just having a great time. And she even performed with me when Patty and I played recently in northern Finland. I wasn't exactly a stage mother, but I thought, hey, I paid you a ticket to come over here. Least you could do is get up and do the poi with us. So and she's a kapahaka girl. So she came up on Warrior Woman. Well, I could not believe it. She's there in front of this, you know, crowd of about 400. Bloody awesome. Very proud of her. Yeah. It's a new generation of young Māori that are coming through that are singing in the language. There's new labels. There's more Māori managers around. There's more art managers around. So it's taken a bit of pressure off me, because then I can actually concentrate on being creative without having the pressure that, oh, I've got to, you know, rattle the cage over here. I still do a bit of that, but there's other people rattling it. There's Tama Waipara, there's Anahita Higgins and Nina Kay rattling the cage. So I can actually make music for the sake of it because it's fun, without thinking I've got all this pressure on me to bloody, you know, shake it up a little bit. And that's quite nice. Yeah, I'm quite liking that space. Because a lot of the time when we were writing songs or performing them in the earlier days, it was to make a point, you know, like by fusing haka and poi and language with dance music. It was really fun creatively, really fun, but also it was like making a point. There's this complementary thing. These have value. Both of them have value. Both of them have their own integrity. And now I don't have to make that point anymore. I can just do whatever I like. If I want to do a country bloody album, I'll just do it. Yeah, that's quite liberating. I keep trying to talk to young people and to musicians just to really understand why they want to get into the music industry. You know, are they passionate about it? Can they see themselves in it for the long haul? Because I think there's a lot of short gratification opportunities, and You know, I think Dalvanius is right with all his proverbs he said to me. You know, keep your feet on the ground, don't believe your own publicity. Stuff like that. Keep it real. So I don't think you can get too fat-headed in the Māori world, because when I go back to the marae, I've got to do the dishes. I can't even get in charge of the puddings. Yeah.